Success Insight shares the stories of the people with passion and drive who make things happen in the world. Here's your host, Howard Fox.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Career Focus on the Success Insight podcast. Career Focus supports individuals who are pursuing careers that tap into their skills and passions and introduces you to entrepreneurs and companies that are helping to make that dream a reality. Our guest today is Bob Goodwin. Bob is the founder of Career Club. Now, Career Club was founded to help people who are in job transition learn how to get a better job faster. Bob Goodwin, it's a pleasure to have you on the Career Focus on the Success Insight podcast. Thank you.
Hey, Howard, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. Now, for our listeners, Bob and I share a little common trajectory through a nonprofit we both have supported and know about back in Chicago, the Career Transition Center. But I'm really excited to learn more about you and your work, and really for our listeners to find out more about Career Club. So why don't we start with a little bit of your background, because that really is a driving force behind how you've set up Career Club.
Yeah, and again, thanks for having me. So the background, just to be kind of brief but relevant, I hope, is I've got a sales and sales leadership background. So my first job was at Xerox, and I always tell people that was like getting an MBA in sales. I've never had to unlearn anything I learned at Xerox. But for the past 20 years, I've been selling to big brands like Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, Samsung, people like that. I'm a salesperson selling to world-class marketers. And we'll get into more detail on this, I'm sure. But what I really learned was a job search is basically a big sales and marketing exercise, right? And if you haven't been in sales or marketing, and certainly not to the level I have, why would you be good at either one of those things?
Well, I'm really glad you shared a little bit of this background. And one of the aspects from a career change like I went through into the coaching, we go through coach training or we go into whatever training it is, and we never learn how to market and to sell the work that we do.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated what you've just shared, because you took this experience of selling and marketing, and you actually have turned that into an offer or a product, a service, for your ideal clients. So I want to applaud that, because, I wish I had gone back to get my MBA or worked for a company who was actually going to teach me how to do that. So that totally resonated when you brought that up. How did you begin to take this work that you had done and contemplate, I want to help people and I want to use my skills and expertise to do that?
About 10 years ago, just doing a lot of networking. I naturally just like meeting people and being in sales. I think networking is part of the thing. But I'm in Cincinnati and started helping one guy that was in job search and, working on just sort of his resume and things like that. And really, again, taking those sales and marketing principles, like, what's your unique value proposition? What problems do you solve? How do you communicate those? And I just naturally was doing that because that's sort of what I was, trained how to do. And the guy that I was helping started introducing me to other people. It's like, hey, Anita, I think Bob might be able to help you. Hey, Brian, I think Bob might be able to help you. And all of a sudden I became on the short list of, have you networked with Bob? And, just trying to provide, again, some of those insights that I'd learned in my day job. And this is just all networking and helping people. And, you do that a few, literally 1,000 times, you start to develop a perspective on where people tend to need help and how to communicate that.
So you literally just fell into this by, that initial conversation of helping a friend, and then it just blew up from there.
That's exactly how it happened.
That's amazing. How did you then begin to say, maybe there was this light bulb went off, this insight, like there's something more to this and there's some opportunity here. I definitely have my background, and it's time to leave a Xerox and go on and really take this newfound passion and grow with it?
That's a great question. I've been thinking about that for the past 3 years at least. like, what's a scalable way of doing this? This is great helping one person at a time. And then I do some speaking in front of job search groups. I've written a decent amount of content on LinkedIn, but all that has, kind of a finite audience. And so the idea has always kind of been in the back of my mind, how do I do this more at scale? And it was the pandemic, like so many things, the pandemic just, you know, pushed a lot of ideas forward, like work from home, even like, click and collect at the grocery store and all the things that, Zoom, like everything just like was going to take 5 years, happened in 5 weeks, you know? And for me, they're like when 30 million, 40 million people have applied for unemployment for the first time. I'm like, oh my gosh, those are just like staggering numbers. And candidly, a friend of mine kind of poked me. It's like, Bob, like, if not now, when? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And so, started trying to think like, all right, well, what does help really look like for people? Like, and then the business model would start to kind of come from that. And so, kind of super briefly, first thing was just getting all these ideas and things that I'd written content on or talk about. The way I say it, Howard, is I feel like I put a bunch of pieces of a puzzle on the table, but I never painted the box cover. What's this whole thing supposed to look like when you're done? So first thing was I wrote an online course that's covering attitude and branding, networking, interviewing, and negotiating. So did that. But the second piece that I noticed was that people needed help getting organized in their job search. They're literally running their job search off of sticky notes in a spreadsheet.
I knew you were going to say spreadsheet.
Right.
Yes.
And everybody does that. And it's fine. And you just keep adding more columns to the right as you figure out more stuff you need to keep up with. And then it starts getting more complicated. So now I have a new tab inside my workbook, and then it gets more complicated. I start color coding. Well, the salesperson in me is like, well, this is a CRM. This is what people are trying to do, their homemade CRM tool. I'm like, CRM already exists, but nobody had, at least that I've seen it at anything that looks like scale, had taken a CRM tool and applied it to the use case of a job search.
Bob, I wonder if you would do me a favor for our listeners that don't know what CRM is. Can you perhaps define that acronym and provide a little explanation? Because this is important, when we begin to dive into Career Club.
Yeah, no, great question. So, customer relationship management. So if anybody is familiar with salesforce.com, that is kind of the preeminent, or at least the best known one. And essentially what that allows companies to do is, one, keep track of all of their customers, prospects, opportunities, contact information, activities with all of these companies or prospects. And essentially, it's how they stay organized instead of having stuff scribbled on sticky notes or trying to run their business off of a Google sheet.
There's a question that I still would love to go a little deeper with you. When you were with Xerox, sales and marketing, and then you helped this friend with the resume, and then you began to get more referrals coming your way. When did this trajectory actually get into, I want to make my next career helping people with their career and their progress? How did that evolve?
Yeah, so it was during the pandemic, and probably around April or May, when all the statistics are in the Wall Street Journal or all the newspapers, 30, 40 million people, applying for first time unemployment benefits. And it was like, how can I go help more people, really at scale? And I'm at a stage in my career, candidly, where, I wanted what I was doing to really matter. Intellectually, I was loving my job, but I'm not really sure I was making that much difference in the world. And, I felt like there was this really great opportunity to do what I would coach somebody to do, is figure out, what are you good at? What do you care about? And how can you support your family? And the intersection of those three circles is typically what you should be doing. That's going to be your sweet spot. And for me, it was, I'm good at sales and marketing. I genuinely care about people in job transition because it's a really hard place to find yourself. And the trick was, what's the business model? What's a way that I can support myself and my family doing that? And the light bulb went off, and we can talk about that in a minute. But yeah, that was it was about a year ago during the earlier days of the pandemic.
So had you been helping people with their career, again, these referrals that you were speaking to, had you been actively pursuing helping people
Yes.
before? Okay, that's what I want to kind of get
Yeah,
to is how long was that?
for like 10 years.
10 years. Okay. Because I mean, I love the fact that, this pandemic has changed a lot for us. And, we have these aha moments, and in the show notes that you sent along, you shared these magic two words, the Sundays suck. And I cannot tell you how I hated Sundays, whether I was going through school or whether I was getting ready to get on a plane on a Monday to go fly somewhere to work on a technology project. But you had spent 10 years helping people. And it sounds like then with the pandemic, which was a kind of a great leveler for many of us, and an opportunity to sit back and think, what is it that I'm really doing here? You then made this great had this great aha moment, like,
Yes.
I need to do something different, and I've got these skills and expertise, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is how Career Club came about.
Yes, exactly. And part of the thing was because I've been helping people for 10 years, I had done what would amount to 10 years of market research.
Right.
So it wasn't like, oh gosh, I wonder if anybody would ever use something like this. I wonder if this is even a good idea, if this meets a market need. It's like I knew for a fact people were kind of getting stressed out on at least two things. One is just staying organized, and that's where the CRM piece, you know, kicks in. People just getting like, oh my gosh, I think I forgot to call that lady back. Which resume did I send these people? Who did that guy say I was supposed to call again? I mean, all those things are just kind of basic organization skills, just giving people a tool to help them with that. But the other big piece, and this is highly related, is people don't know all the cool companies out there. So many people, when they're starting a job search, go and get the book of lists for your city. And, what are the 50 biggest companies or whatever it is? And all of a sudden, everybody in that town has the same target list, and it's the biggest companies in your city. Or they go to, who are my biggest competitors at my last job? I guess I'll just go work for one of them. And I'm just like, oh my word, there are so many great companies out there that you've never heard of. And so the insight on that one was around companies that are getting venture capital money. And so I had spent my last few years working in financial services and calling on Wall Streeters. So I got kind of dialed into the world of venture capital and private equity. And what I learned was, when these companies are getting 20, 30, 50 million dollars in venture capital money, the only reason they got that money was to grow and to scale. And that means they're hiring tons of people, and not just Python programmers, but they need more HR people and finance and marketing and sales and everything. And so they're adding like crazy. And then they're also in some cases scaling up. So the person that got them to call it $20 million in revenue may not be the same skill set of the person that's going to get them to 200 million in revenue. And so that just creates this massive bit of white space for people to go take their job search efforts and career planning efforts to. But they're companies that you've never heard of with funny names, but they've got a truckload of cash, they've got momentum, and they're hiring. And so the idea was, how can we take all these great companies and integrate it into the CRM tool so that I can both find and discover these really great companies that are growing and probably looking for somebody like me, and then get organized and basically do a sales and marketing campaign to those companies to go get my next new job.
So it sounds like this access to these companies that have received the venture capital, they are in a growth trajectory because, like you say, they've gotten money in, and then they're using this money to grow, whether it's operations or people across many different skill sets. Is Would you say this is the cornerstone of Career Club, or what other aspects are attached to it that would make it a full service career platform to manage my search and to find these really interesting companies? Because by the way, I totally agree with you. We if we get laid off and there's a transition, we look for people or companies that are just like us.
Yes.
And you say there's, with the pandemic, all of a sudden there's thousands and thousands of people who have laid off and are all looking for the same position for the same company.
Yeah. So we did a pilot back in the spring of this year, March, April, May. And I feel like there was sort of like two big learnings for me coming out of that. One is that this idea of having an activation, the CRM platform, to help me find great companies and then go reach out to them and manage my sale or my search process, was meeting a market need. But the other piece, and this is where coaches like you and other really good career advisors comes in, is the curriculum of putting together again an online course to get people's head in a good space, attitudinally. And we can talk about that in a minute. But then the branding, the networking, the interviewing, and the negotiating, those are skills that, Howard, like people are in dire need of those skills. And that's kind of the playbook part of it, of like, what should I be doing? How do I do it? And then the CRM platform is that activation tool, like to go run that knowledge through on your way to your next job. So those are sort of like the two big, for me, two sides of the same coin. What should I do? And then how to do it.
Very good. So when a potential client comes to you, and well, actually, I don't want to use the word potential, I'm going to use the word ideal client. And that should be familiar to you from a sales and marketing perspective. So when you sold, you had your ideal client avatar. Who are Career Club's ideal clients?
Yeah, it's going to be white collar professional kinds of folks, at least 5 years into their career. So I don't know if that exactly counts as mid career, but probably at least 5 years into their career. I would say that for sure, and this is probably obvious when I say it, but people that come from a sales and marketing background, sales or marketing background, somebody that's already got experience with the CRM tool or understands at least sort of the foundational principles of that, gravitate to this pretty quickly. The second sort of step out is like people who are in any kind of a client facing role. So I think about client service, customer success folks do really well with this. Where it starts to get a little bit second or third degree out would be an engineer, accountants, people that aren't used to interacting a lot with clients or kind of air quote selling. That starts to, it's a learning, more of a learning curve for those folks versus people who come more from a sales, marketing, client services background.
And the types of companies that you are investigating and sharing, introducing via computer data.
Yep.
What types of companies are these? We can't read a newspaper or go onto onto a website that has news and not hear about mergers, acquisitions, seed money, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the types of companies that would fall into this bucket that you're presenting to your clients?
Yeah. So that's a great question. The good news is that pretty much every company now is a technology company in some form or fashion. There's I'm struggling to think of an industry or a category that hasn't and isn't being touched by technology. And venture capital money and private equity money, like this is shocking to people, but 2020, the pandemic, right? The depths of the pandemic, 2020 saw the most money getting poured into venture capital than any other year in history. So the world did not go on pause with investments. And that was like one of the things I was trying to teach people last year was they're like, well, maybe I should just put my job search on pause while everything, kind of settles down. And I'm like, no, the opposite. Like you need to find the gas pedal because there's a ton of money pouring into virtually every industry because technology is trying to touch every industry. You just need to find the companies that are benefiting from that right now. And I could give you several anecdotes of people that were like, oh, okay, let me go try that, and had jobs within 4 weeks.
That's fantastic. And so really the client who is using the system or service really has to they've got to do the blocking and tackling, the work on the take the course, work on their brand, work on their networking, understand how to network, how to negotiate, get the resume, the LinkedIn profile all sorted out. But
Yes.
then they need to really get their head around that I'm not going to go the traditional route of going out to Indeed.com or Career Builder or look, for the competitors of the companies I was just let go from, but they're going to use this research in this tool to be able to say, here's the companies that have been getting this venture capital money. And if I look at them and then I create this plan of networking, reaching out, et cetera, this is how I'm going to do it. So that might be a little bit of a mind shift for them.
It is, and kind of the what I think is generally good news in that is a lot of times I'll get introduced to people who have tried those other things. And they're like, Bob, I've literally applied for 200 jobs on Indeed and LinkedIn and all those other sites that you mentioned. And like, nobody's getting back to me. I've gotten like two responses and then I got ghosted by those companies. And I'm like, yeah, that's because the process is really broken. Technology is in favor of the employer. And, again, that was sort of if I had a key insight in this whole thing was there was no enabling technology to help the candidate. And so once you figure out and you beat your head up against the wall enough times that applying online and being one of 250 applicants for a job isn't a road to success, then the career club idea starts to make sense to people of let's slow down. What's your value proposition? What problems do you solve for a potential employer? Now let's go build a list of those kinds of companies and let's start with the company. And then take your networking efforts and all the other things that you're learning how to do really good research on a company, how to do informational interviews, again, networking into the company, using LinkedIn effectively. Now it all starts to kind of fall in place because there's a process and a sequence that actually works because it's the same process and sequence that a salesperson uses all day, every day to hit their quota.
Is the program designed to be, I don't know, for the sake of a better words, self-sufficient? Like I sign up for the program, the service. Is the course all say online? Is there human interaction? Are there people like me, the coach who's used to working with a client in to help them facilitate that job search, or is it designed to be basically, I guess, self-sufficient? You take the course, you do the online exercises, and then via the recordings, the lessons, we're going to show you how to use this tool and take the following steps.
Great question. So my key learning coming out of the pilot period is I am not my client. If you put a tool like this in front of me, I would just spend all weekend on it, playing with it, figuring out, read the course, and I'd just go. And Most people want more structure, and that was a big piece of feedback that I got from my 50 users during the pilot was they needed more structure. So what I did was I hired a director of client success. She's phenomenal. And what she is building out are really kind of the playbooks, the training materials, the training videos to get people properly onboarded. The platform is initially designed to be, with those support materials and some customer success or client service access to getting help. But the idea was to be more self-sufficient. What I've learned is there are different kinds of people who can take that only so far. So, and this is obviously, Howard, how you and I met, was I'm building out a network of career coaches for people that need that extra bit of help. So the analogy I use is like with a gym. Some people are good with just going to the gym. They have their own workout. They know what they want to do and it works for them. Other people need a personal trainer and they need that level of kind of support, accountability, structure. And I don't think there's a right way or wrong way. I think it's just very person dependent on what works for you. So I would say it's kind of yes and. Some people it's do it yourself. And for other people, it's, this is a part of a bigger plan where they incorporate a career coach.
Okay. And during this program, is your client, are they signing up, on a monthly basis? Is it, 6 months, 3 months, year? What happens after, by the way?
Yeah. So I love the direction of where you're taking this. So it's called Career Club on purpose, not Job Search Club. For a lot of people, that's fine if it's like, hey, look, I need to use this to change jobs. Either I don't have a job right now and I need this help, or they aren't happy. We talked about Sunday night sucks and they want a new job. If they use it in that way, that's fine. I just want people to go, as we say, get a better job faster. You should enjoy where you work. But I think that where people will start to figure out is that networking never stops. The millennial, this is a Bureau of Labor Statistics number, but the average time millennials are in one job at one company is 2.8 years. So, more than, or at least half people are changing jobs like every 2.5 years. So your network is always on. And I'm on LinkedIn every day. I love LinkedIn, but it is not a professional networking CRM tool.
No, it's not.
Right. So where do I keep all my notes about Howard Fox and, the things that you're interested in, other things that we have talked about, the people you've told me I should talk to, the people I told you should talk to, or anything? Like there isn't a good place for that. So Career Club is designed from kind of a maintenance mode or nurturing and nourishing your network to be that platform as well. But to answer your question more directly, people can subscribe to it monthly, which is fine, or they can subscribe annually. It's like a 20% discount if people want to subscribe annually. And part of the annual subscription, we've decided, for reasons that I told you a minute ago, to include the online course, because I do really believe that they work hand in hand. They're not one or the other. It's yes and.
Very good. Now I'm curious, and you alluded to it a few minutes ago during the pilot, but the folks that have invested in the program and have gone through it, what are they saying about it?
A couple things. One thing I didn't tell you is that we are doing what I call office hours twice a week. So Tuesday morning and Thursday afternoon to kind of cover, all the time zones in the US. And part of that is creating community. And so that people feel like they're part of something, and particularly for our friends that are in transition, that they've got a place to go. There's other like-minded people who are sort of in the same place, in a career journey. So a big part of the feedback was, hey, just being around other people is really helpful. being able to ask very specific questions like, hey, I've got an interview coming up tomorrow. I'm thinking about this or that. What's the group think? Bob, can you give me some advice? It's been really gratifying hearing people get good value from the course as well, like how to tell a story in an interview. But the for some people, and this again just sort of depends on the person, I don't think there's a right or wrong. For some people, it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know about all these companies. You've completely opened my eyes up to how big, there's so many opportunities out there I was not aware of. And then for other people, it's like, thank you for getting me organized. That was the biggest source of stress for me. And once I got organized, I was able to be a lot more effective and efficient. So, again, it sort of depends on the person and where they're at, in their job search phase of what the most value was that they got out of it. It kind of depended on the person.
Very good. And something's dawning on me too is, I mean, you had said it, you're on LinkedIn every day, and as am I. I love LinkedIn, but as a CRM tool, it's really not. They may offer some, little tweaks here and there. They are owned by Microsoft, but at the end of the day, it's not an efficient CRM tool. And I think, together with the career club and this your CRM tool, I think that's just a massive 1-2 punch.
Thank you. I mean, you know, like I said, having helped people for like 10 years in job search, I was pretty sure that that part was spot on. Um, but getting people to actually use it and have water run through the pipes and validate that piece, has been very gratifying. And that's why now is an exciting time for us at Career Club, which is just kind of getting the word out. Again, Howard, thank you so much for even having me as a guest on your podcast. But yeah, I mean, just watching people find it every day and get engaged with it has been super, super gratifying.
Fantastic. Now, Bob, at the end of our show, we have a segment. We don't always do it, but I like to do it. It's called Insight to Go, and I am going to ask you what that insight to go is, but I'm also going to ask you another question because you and I are similar age ranges, and so you've been around the block a little bit. You've worked with one of the most well-known and recognizable logos in the world with Xerox, and you've made a trajectory in your career. So before we do the insight to go, my question for you is, looking back at your career and what you're doing now, are you surprised, or what would you say to your younger self, knowing where you're at now, what you're doing, the impact you're having versus some of the decisions you've made earlier in your career? Would you do the exact same thing, or are there some insights like, wow?
Yeah, wow, that's such a good question. I think, overall my life philosophy would be, try to not have regrets. I wouldn't be the person I am today if I had not had the experiences that I've had, some good, some not good. I've got a really good friend that says good judgment comes from experience and experience comes from bad judgment.
I love it. I love that.
No, I mean, there's more than a grain of truth in that. If I'm being really honest with myself, I think that I'm really glad for how much time I have made for building relationships. Again, I didn't make this one up, but where people say your network is your net worth. And I do believe that. I mean, like at the end of the day, it's about the relationships that you build. And I'm super happy about that. On the other side, uh, I would probably counsel myself to maybe have stuck it out a little bit longer at some places, and I hope I'm not contradicting Sunday night sucks. Look, every job isn't amazing all the time, right? And you go through seasons where, well, this isn't as much fun as it used to be. Okay, that's fine. That's life, and there are seasons. But when things aren't fun regularly and just like this just isn't great, and you don't believe that there's a chance for it to get better or to shift roles or whatever, maybe it is time to leave. I think maybe I pulled the fire alarm too early once or twice. and could have stuck it out a little bit longer. But like I said, that ended up opening up other doors and new opportunities and new experiences that all kind of form where I've landed today. So ultimately, no regrets.
Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. Now, before we close down the show for today, any final quote unquote insight to go that you'd like to share with our listening audience?
Yeah, and this is particularly for people who might find themselves in job search, is that you have value. And what really kicked off some of this, like I want to do this more full time, was a networking meeting that I had a few years ago. And the guy's self-esteem was so beat down, and his body language was just screaming like, I don't have any value. And he was apologizing as we were just meeting, like, I'm so sorry to take up your time. I'm like, no, I'm happy to be here. Really. And what occurred to me, Howard, was that people don't always recognize the value that they have to contribute and pour into other people's lives. Sometimes it's professionally, sometimes it's personally. And so my favorite question to ask people isn't, how can you help me? But how can I help you? If you genuinely go into relationships, that could be a networking thing, that could be a backyard barbecue, whatever, but to take the time to learn about the other person and to genuinely try and identify a way that if you could possibly be of help to them, that is for me the key relationship life hack that has made all the difference for me.
That's fantastic. No, I totally am in congruence with you. I mean, it's not what do I want or need, but it's how can I help you? And that
Yes.
opens up lots of conversations and lots of doors. So,
Yes.
and, in some ways, even our conversation today is based on that. So I appreciate that.
100%. And it's a very differentiated behavior, because even if people say, you know what, Howard, I can't really think of anything right now, but gosh, thank you for asking. It's just even communicating that attitude that, I want to be of help. Like I want to be a net giver in my relationships is a very differentiated behavior that people remember and appreciate.
Very good. Very good. So, Bob, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where are the best places for them to go?
So first, of course, would be the website. The domain is career.club. So www.career.club. I didn't know .club was an extension, so that seemed to be an easy one for me.
I love that, by the way, because that fooled me as I'm prepping for the notes, and I had .com, and it's like I didn't go anywhere. But
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of cool, and we even incorporated into the logo where there's a little orange dot between the words career and club. And then obviously, I would really welcome people to connect with me on LinkedIn personally, as well as follow Career Club on LinkedIn, producing a lot of content right now, and all for free, just trying to share insights and things that people find helpful. And then lastly is if somebody wants to email me, it's pretty simple again, bob@career.club.
fantastic. Well, we will definitely provide the backlinks to the website at career.club, as well as to your LinkedIn profile and to the company page for Career Club. Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on Career Focus on the Success Insight podcast, and great to really kind of dive in and learn more about you and your work. And really, I mean, this tool is fascinating to me, and I think, and as a career coach myself, many years. I mean, when I started coaching back in 2009, and it was at the Career Transition Center in Chicago, and I think we do great work, and I've continued down this career coaching path, and I can definitely see, God, I wish this tool was around working with some of the clients I have had in the past. In fact, probably would have even have helped me, build my coaching practice a lot sooner. But I appreciate that. So thank you once again for taking the time out of the start of your week to join us on Career Focus on the Success Insight podcast.
Well, Howard, thank you so much. I mean, it's a very generous invitation on your part, and wish you all the success and looking forward to working with you here in the coming days.
You got it. You got it.
Awesome.
All right, folks, we have just been chatting with Bob Goodwin. He is the founder of Career Club. Career Club was founded to help people who are in job transition learn how to get a better job faster. And as we've learned today, he's leveraged his B2B sales and marketing experience, working with a very well-known logo like Xerox, and really, taking these lessons learned of over 10 years of providing some coaching for folks that he crossed paths with, and like many folks during this pandemic, and all of a sudden this major churn in the workforce, realizing there's an opportunity here to really fulfill and crush a need that was out there. And really, this is a fascinating tool, Career Club. And we do hope you go out and visit the site, learn more about it. Again, it's at career.club, and we'll provide the backlink to it, as well as to Bob's LinkedIn profile and the Career Club LinkedIn company page. So you want to go out there and follow Career Club as well. If you'd like to learn more about our work here on Career Focus and the Success Insight podcast, we are on LinkedIn and Facebook with our company pages, Success Insight Podcast. We really would love for you to not only like, share, but comment on episodes like this. I mean, this episode was pure gold today. And if you or somebody is struggling in their career, or perhaps they are in transition, do go out and check out Career Club. You can also listen to this episode on all of the podcasting platforms. I think I can safely say that now. Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pandora. There's many other sites that are out there for folks that like to listen to podcasts on the run. We are also on Spotify, and we love Spotify because we've organized all of our Success Insight podcast episodes into playlists. And this episode today with Bob about Career Club is going to be on our Career Focus playlist. So you'll be able to listen to us there. You can download the episode, and wherever you're at, walking down the street, in the gym, anywhere you want. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you join us here as listeners. And again, we want to hear your thoughts on this episode, and, do go out and share it with folks that you think will benefit from it. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day. Take care of yourselves, your family. Wear that mask if it makes sense. Practice social distancing if it makes sense. But we'll definitely looking forward to having you join us again on the Success Insight podcast and Career Focus. Take care now.
Success Insight is a production of Fox Coaching and First Story Strategies. Find us online, successinsightpodcast.com.